Hey, how's it going, guys? Professor J here. Let's go ahead and talk about the cause of the World War II Pacific Theater. When Emperor Hirohito took the throne in Japan, there was a clash in power between ultra-nationalists and liberals. The ultra-nationalists seized power within the Japanese government by having the Peace Preservation Law, which reduced the power of the liberals. The ultra-nationalists were initially against westernization, but after they saw World War I, they began to westernize. How did they westernize? I got you guys. They began to westernize with industrialism, mass education, and militarism. When the United States had the Great Depression, the Japanese economy was devastated. The Japanese economy being bad, caused Japanese citizens to go into social disorder, which lowered the power of the ultra-conservative government, because the ultra-conservative government could no longer provide for their people. With the ultra-conservative government being weak, allowed the military to act on their own and invade Manchuria, which brought in raw resources and expanded the Japanese territory, which made the Japanese people happy. The Japanese people being happy allowed the military to gain even more power and for military officials to seize key positions within the Japanese government. With chief military officers in key Japanese government positions allowed Japan's principal goal to be expanding. Japan wanting to expand was exemplified with their idea of the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. This was Japan's justification to go to Southeast Asia and conquer their neighboring nations. When the U.S. banned their oil exports into Japan, the Japanese people did not like that, and so they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Okay, this is Professor Tyler here. So we're going to be going over the course of the Pacific Theater, and today we'll cover Pearl Harbor, island hopping, Wake Island, the Coral Sea, how the U.S. broke Japanese code, the Battle of Midway, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and the firebombing raids, as well as the Manhattan Project, which ultimately led to the U.S. winning the war with Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
As a result of the buildup of tension between the U.S. and Japan decided to take matters into their own hands and conduct an offensive attack that would live in infamy. On December 7, 1941, Japan decided to attack what is well known as Pearl Harbor at around 8 in the morning. This would outrage the U.S., and on December 8th, the U.S. declared war on Japan. The U.S. devised a strategy against Japan where they would take over small Japanese islands that were not well defended. This was known as island hopping, and the U.S. would take over these islands to progressively get closer to the mainland of Japan. On December 8th, Japan would attack a U.S. base in Wake Island. Japan would end up winning this battle, but later in the war, the U.S. would recapture Wake Island. The Battle of the Coral Sea was also another very significant battle, as it was the first sea-to-air battle and would be an important victory to the U.S. as it destroyed much of the Japanese fleet. The U.S. had also broke the Japanese code, which would give the U.S. an edge in the Battle of Midway because of the newly found information about their military's location and formation. The battle lasted 4 days and was again an important victory to the U.S. and allowed the U.S. to move more offensively in the Pacific Theater. Perhaps among the most important battles during the Pacific Theater were Iwo Jima and Okinawa. These islands were both heavily defended and would take the U.S. quite some time to capture. However, these battles are significant as it allowed the U.S. to set up an offensive perimeter around the mainland of Japan. The U.S. had already been on the offense in the mainland of Japan with the firebombing raids in Tokyo. These raids resulted in Japanese industry suffering as well as a significant amount of civilian deaths. Not only were these raids carried through, but a new destructive weapon was also being worked on in the Manhattan Project. This was known as the atomic bombs. The successful creation of the Fat Man and the Little Boy would ultimately lead up to the Japanese surrender after these bombs would be dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and would have long-lasting effects on the populations of Japan.
Hey guys, my name is Professor Alec. I am going to talk about the home fronts of America and Japan during World War II. Now, to start it off, after Pearl Harbor, immense fear went through the U.S. No one ever expected to get attacked on their own home front, especially the U.S. So it just created this immense fear. Because of this, U.S. officials created internment camps for all Japanese descent. They didn't want to take any risks. They didn't want to have any other problems happening in the home front. After, rationing systems were established because the World War II was America's biggest priority. They had no other priorities. This was their big thing. Then, entertainment was a medium-used thing. It wasn't as big as propaganda, but it was used to get propaganda through to the people, like movies, TV, shows. This was also an escape for people. People worried about the war. They worried about their sons, their fathers, their brothers, their cousins, whatever, because they went off to the war. They were afraid they were going to die. This was used as an escape. Next, radios were used as info in the war. People wanted to find out what was happening, but what happened is that radios, not only radios, but TV was used to show just good things in the war. Not all the bad stuff was shown during TV and like entertainment and stuff. The government wanted to show people good stuff, like that we were winning, that we were defeating the Japanese and the Nazis. Next, women had the biggest part in the war. This is biggest part. Men fought the war, but women were a big part in the war. They took control of the workforce because the men had to go off to war. They left all their jobs. Women had to do something. They couldn't just sit at home and take care of their kids. Now, Japan had the same thing. Women played a big part in Japan, but the government favored propaganda over war support. They weren't so worried about getting support from their people. They wanted propaganda for men to join. Next, both countries actually had food rationing systems that were successful because both prioritized World War II. Next, Japan actually wanted to increase their birth rate. Birth rate was increased a little bit, but not significantly to where it would actually mean a difference in the war. Now, nationalistic countries. Japan was more nationalistic. America was nationalistic, but Japan was willing to have their soldiers kill themselves so that they can't tell them information or be taken prisoner. America had nationalistic soldiers as well, but Japan was way more nationalistic. They were willing to go and kill themselves. They were willing to die for their country. We were too, but they were way more extremist about it.
Brianna,
What up, everybody? It's the Professor Angel here.
and we're going to be talking about the outcome of the Pacific Theater. So the Japanese Navy and Air Force were destroyed, and the Japanese economy was devastated after Allied blockade and bombing. Later, the Potsdam Declaration was issued, and it was unconditional surrender of Japanese forces, but Japan said no because they didn't want to surrender. So later, Russia declared war on Japan and invaded in Manchuria after the first bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. And after Russia declared war, another bomb was dropped in Nagasaki. So Japan formally surrendered on September 2, 1945.
So after that, guys, the U.S. was able to take control over Japan, and this led to like many deaths and injuries, more so in Hiroshima. And this is an Allied victory over the great Empire of Japan. And if we move over to where the USSR is, they wanted to regain the land lost from the war against Japan. We're talking about the Russo-Japanese War, and they wanted the land promised to them from the Yalta Conference, which happened in February 1945. And if you don't know what the Yalta Conference is, it basically consists of Stalin, Churchill, and President Roosevelt. At the end of this, though, USSR would eventually regain the land that they wanted from the Yalta Conference.